Today we have Miss Mandy Uticone of Carolina Beach Oyster Company that will be presenting with us. So for those of you that aren't familiar with 1 Million Cups, what we do here is our goal is to connect entrepreneurs over 1 million cups of coffee. This is a program that was created by the Kauffman Foundation, and they have hundreds of chapters all over the United States. I don't want to say we're the best, but we might be the best. The numbers do add up. So today, Mandy's going to have 6 minutes to present, and then we're going to do 20 minutes of Q&A. The goal here is to see how we can help you and your business and help you succeed, because that's our goal. We want to see our local businesses grow and thrive. So without further ado, Mandy, go ahead. The floor is yours. You got 6 minutes.
Thank you so much. All right, guys. Well, thanks all for being here today. Like Jamie said, I'm Mandy with Carolina Beach Oyster Company. I've owned my business for about 2 years now and always looking for ideas on how to improve and expand. So I'm going to talk a little bit about oysters and their importance in North Carolina, and then a little bit about what I do. And yeah, any suggestions, feedback, questions are always helpful. So I would appreciate that at the end. Just to talk a little bit about oysters and our environment. If many of you love oysters or oyster eaters and all that, you know that they're also really good for the environment. They're extremely great filter feeders. One single adult oyster can filter 50 gallons of water a day. With all the development and things going on here, we get a lot of sediments in the water, a lot of pollution. And so them filtering out our waters is actually really beneficial. So being an oyster farmer, clean waters are important, and I know that my oysters are out there doing their job as they're in the water growing, getting ready to sell to market. They are also really good for oyster reefs. They provide habitat. The North Carolina Coastal Federation does a lot of artificial reef programs where they put these reefs down. And then when oysters are developing, they're going to attach to these when they're free larvae in the water, and then they're going to build on it, becoming more oyster reefs. And it protects from erosion. And there's just so many benefits besides that, but being home to other fish and other animals, as well as that coastal erosion helping with that. So to get into oyster farming, kind of what I do, this industry has been really growing in the past probably 10 years. We actually lease water from the state. So we have to get it approved. It goes through a long process that could be about a year long before you actually get your lease approved. And this industry, like I said, it started off maybe 80 or so leases, maybe about 10 years ago. And now we're up to about 362 leases that are here from the state, or that are leased from the state to oyster farmers. So it's taking the pressure off of wild harvest, which is great because we do have a little bit depleting stocks of wild harvest. And so a little bit of a balance, this kind of does that. So we're allowed to farm in the water in cages, and then wild harvesters will have plenty as well, but we're not taking all from wild harvest. And so basically we start out in a hatchery. This is where we buy our seed from. So this picture right here is how small these oysters are usually when I get them, and I take care of them until they are market size, which is usually about 2.5 inches to 3 inches, depending on preference from a restaurant, what size they need. And so on the left, the picture is of a nursery tank, and that's where the baby oysters can grow up, or you can put them in cages when they're that small. But it's nice to have them in something like this because they grow more uniform. You can grade them and size them, and that's kind of part of my whole job, is to basically split the oysters, grade them, size them, and just kind of keep maintenance on them so that they look really pretty when you bring them to market, because a lot of restaurants are really into the half shell. And so they want a really pretty deep cupped oyster for flavor and just something that looks really presentable when they make their dishes. And so a little bit about the difference. You can't eat wild oysters in the summer. Here's where we always struggle as oyster farmers. I think the big misconception is that people think that you can't eat oysters in months that don't have R in them. And so that's summer months. And with farming, you can actually eat oysters year round. They are completely safe. We have a lot of regulations we go through in order to allow them to be eaten year round. And the reason for this, there's some differences. So a diploid oyster, I'm not really into the whole biology of it, but a diploid oyster in the water, a wild oyster is actually in the summer, they're spawning. And so if you were to harvest a wild oyster in the summer, it's going to be watery and tasteless and not have much flavor because they're expending all their energy on spawning. And triploids, which are the oyster seed, those small babies that we buy, they come from a hatchery where they breed them and they cross tetraploid oysters as males and diploids as females. And they combine them and you get a triploid. And triploids don't spawn for the most part. Some do, there's always exceptions, but for the most part, they do not spawn. So as you can see the difference in the picture, you're getting a healthier, meatier oyster all year round. Its meat to shell ratio is really good compared to a diploid, where in the summer they get just kind of watery and a lot smaller. And so, and they also grow faster and they are bred for disease resistance. So we kind of get a quality product to our consumers, to our restaurants year round, which they love. And here's a little bit about kind of what I do on the farm. This is the maintenance of it all. We have a big unit that's called the oyster tumbler, and that we put our oysters through probably, they say usually touch your oysters maybe like 6 to 8 times through their whole life cycle. An oyster grows from 2 millimeters to market size 2.5 to 3 inches down here in about 12 to 18 months, which is really good, and why a lot of people say that North Carolina is the Napa Valley of oysters, because they grow really well and there's a lot of different unique flavors. And so we're basically touching them maybe 6 to 8 times through their life cycle. I might do it a little more. I don't have as many oysters as a lot of people do, so I try to take care of them best I can. But we're tumbling them, putting them through that tumbler. It will grade them so that they don't outcompete each other. You don't want really small oyster and with big oysters, because then it's going to kill off the smaller ones, the big ones taking food. So you're grading them. And then that tumbler also washes them, gets biofouling off them, sponge and barnacles and things that grow on them. And then it's also breaking their bills, which is a very unique and kind of important thing about a farm-raised oyster. I think if you see a wild oyster, they're all different shapes and some come in clusters and some are broken off. Well, a farm-raised oyster, we break the bills off them frequently as they grow, so that instead of growing long, they're actually going to get their bill broken and they kind of grow more cup size, more cup shape, which you can kind of see in that picture to the right. So that just holds more of the liqueur and the flavor in it, and people in restaurants and even raw bars and all that, they like that. And so we're also stocking density is really important. So we try to keep maybe 1/3 of that mesh bag that I have there. That's what my oysters are in. We try to keep it up to like 1/3. You don't want it to get to a half or all full, because then they start growing all into each other. And yeah, so the benefits of oyster farming are it provides food. It's not imported seed. Economy. I have a really good relationship with the restaurant that I have, the Shuck and Shack in Wilmington, and they have supported me since day one. They will buy weekly and just always putting up marketing and advertising and helping me out. They're great. And so supporting the local economy is super important, as well as it provides jobs. I have one guy working with me now because I am pretty small, but if I expand, it's helping with jobs for sure. And it's also, like I said, a sustainable approach to farming. We don't feed them anything. They're taking the plankton out of the water, they're eating it. So there's really, there's no downfall to farming. We have to do a lot of maintenance during storms. When we lose cages, we're responsible for retrieving them so that there's no debris in the water. And I think all the farmers understand, and a lot of oyster farmers farm for that reason, because they care about the environment and all the concerns with water quality, and they're just real ocean lovers, really. And this is my website. So I have two. One is ENC Oysters. That's where you can order my oysters from. And then the other one is Carolina Beach Oyster Companies. And that just shows kind of more of my journey. I kind of write blogs as often as I can and sell merchandise. And it's just so people can kind of understand and see what we're doing. I go through all the equipment I use and kind of try to break things down and talk about it a little more in depth, because really I could go on about oyster farming all day. So the conclusion, as I said, water quality, really great. It helps. 50 gallons of water a day for one oyster. I have probably 200,000 oysters in the water right now. Most people have more than that. The guys that I work next to have 3 million in the water. They're a much bigger business. And then it provides biodiversity. I see a lot of different animals near my farm. We'll see red drum, we'll see skates, we'll see all these things. So even though they're in mesh bags, hanging out and floating in these bags, it also provides a lot of protection for smaller animals. I find a lot of cool fish in my bags. I always try to release them and all that. So it's really a healthy environment. And then, as I said, they prevent wild oysters, prevent coastal erosion. Mine are in bags, so they look a little bit different. They're not clusters of oysters on the sides, but wild oysters do that. And overall, positive impact the oysters and oyster farming really does have on the environment. Like I said, it's expanding. So there's a lot of controversy, kind of, especially in Wilmington now with oyster farming, but hopefully we can get everyone to understand it more and then be able to move forward with getting more farms, leasing more area, and continuing on. So just some things to maybe help me with my business. One main thing I always have an issue with, I think we're getting the word out there, but how to educate people on farm raised oysters is a hard journey and why they're sustainable. I think a lot of people, especially down here, like I said, they think it's just a winter thing. But we are trying to, the restaurants I work with and people are trying to move forward with having people understand that it's okay to eat farm raised oysters in the summer. So that's a main thing. And also just maybe how to get the word out a little bit more about my home deliveries. Like I said, I have one restaurant and I am trying to expand more on home deliveries. I don't want to go into too many restaurants because I'm not very large unless I decide to go that route. But just kind of getting the word out on that would be very helpful. So thank you to everybody who was part of this. And